Good morning and welcome into another edition of Mic'd Up here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and Pittsburgh Sports Now and all throughout the Now family of networks. It's Hump Day, and on this edition of the show, Mike and I are going to discuss the Pittsburgh Pirates. They were on the back burner a little bit with all the NFL draft coverage. Kind of good news for them because they were losing while on the back burner, but they pick up a victory last night. Many of you were probably sleeping with those late starts on the road in San Diego, 10 p.m. starting time. Don't love those in comparison to those 640s. But nonetheless, they get the victory and Mitch Keller gets a win. So we're going to discuss that and also touch on, of course, Tom Wilson, who else, acting a fool yet again. And that's been a wild storm of conversation the last day or so. He's Mike Vukovcan. I'm Mike Asti, and Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services. Doug Martin can be reached at 412-849-5894. So grab a cup of coffee, get ready for the day. And Mike, to get us started here, Mitch Keller gets a victory. He pitches 5 innings. They kind of get off the snide. The offense still does not really produce, but they do get a win over a team that had a lot of hype and was supposed to be good this year. What are your thoughts on the Pirates now? Losing streak, victory, but how concerned are you with the offense? Because that's still struggling.
Yeah, that's the reason for their struggles. I think pretty much
Right.
The pitching has been shocking. I don't think that's too strong of a word.
Right.
What they continue to get from Brubaker and Tyler Anderson, who's now made himself, I hate to bring this up, but, he's a guy that, he does this 6-7 more starts, and we start looking at the trade deadline here. He's a guy that teams are going to want. A left-handed pitcher that's able to get a lot of swings and misses. He's done well. So hats off to the Pirates.
Brubaker's the all-star right now for sure.
Yeah, and he got the misfortune of getting no runs when he pitched. Brubaker is going to pitch today, but Anderson the other day took a no-hitter into the 6th or 7th inning. But the pitching's great, and unfortunately, this is what you're going to get with Mitch Keller, and this is why I continue to say that they have no other options but to. He looked like a first-round pick last night. It would have been nice to see him, as you've advocated a few times, and I agree with you. I think they're trying to protect him a little bit as far as mentally knowing that I went out there and had a good start. It'd be nice to see him get into the 7th inning once in a while. But I'll take 5 2/3 innings, 2 hits, 5 strikeouts. He was ahead of the hitters. He was doing very well. So, but that's what you're going to do with this guy for the rest of the year.
Minimal pitches. He had a 47 pitch inning a few starts ago. He was able to get through innings regularly. This game, I saw Mitch Keller starting in the start time. I was thinking, wow, this is a 2 a.m. close. but yeah, he pitched well for sure.
And the thing is that the Pirates staff has, I think they're handling him well. They're being very positive with him because he's frustrated. Everyone has spoke about the fact that this guy is being very he's handling his non-success very well in that he continues to work. He's not pouting. And that's why he's frustrated, is because both Sherrington and Shelton talk about the work that this guy is putting in. And he just is frustrated as to why it's not consistently translating start after start instead of start 3 bad starts and then 1 good start. He needs to start being consistent, but that's a good team he went up against last night as far as offensively. And for him to do that, all they could hope for now is for him to continue to build upon that.
Do you expect consistency from him at all? Can he build off of this? Because this was by far his best start of the year. Or is this just still going to be this roller coaster?
No, I'm going to say yes, is because it's not as though this guy is, nothing against him, but Tyler Anderson, who doesn't have the background. This guy was a first-round pick. He was rated by everyone. It wasn't just the Pirates.
Yeah.
He was rated by everyone in baseball.
Other teams would have taken him too. Right.
Yeah. He was rated one of the top prospects in baseball for a couple of years. And it's not, that's not Pirate PR there. That's what other evaluators see of the guy. So obviously the talent's in them. It's now a matter of, can they find a way to make it consistent, like they wanted to do with Tyler Glass now.
Right.
Those
right.
two are forever going to be linked because of the time in which they were in the organization,
right?
The pedigree both of them had, and what happened with Glass now, and hopefully that doesn't happen with Keller.
Yeah, I mean, this Pirate team's 13-16 though now, so being over 500 and winning and all of that was prior to the NFL draft. That's all gone. This team coming back down to earth a little bit, but again, a big win over the Padres, kind of a necessary win to not let this unravel too long. And in order to get victories that are necessary, that's what great starters are supposed to do, to stop losing streaks, stop bleedings, get them big victories, pick up the offense when they're struggling. Mitch Keller did that. But before we move on from the Pirates, concerns about the offense, because the offense, as we mentioned on past shows, the reason why this team was winning when the pitching was not there was because of the offense, even without Hayes. Give credit, even with some struggling like Polanco, et cetera, and Newman, the offense overall was carrying the team for a while. But now the offense, as you talked about, is kind of the problem.
Yeah.
Polanco is able to do something, but you can't expect much from him with the roller coaster we've seen for a year and a half. Newman's still struggling. Reynolds is kind of what he is. He's been better than he was last year, not 2 years ago, but he's been a good hitter. But overall, it also seems unfortunate, and this is the Pirate way, and this is kind of what A.J. Burnett dealt with years ago, Glass now dealt with, and obviously they're different teams, but it just seems like the Pirates thing. The better the start is, the less run protection that's there. I don't know if they get comfortable or what's going on, but you can't figure that's enough to win games with what they're doing right now.
No, and unfortunately, I don't see much of these guys aren't going to be like this forever. Unfortunately, there's a lot of guys in that lineup with not, very many good stats in the back of their baseball card.
Right.
Jared Stallings, he is what he is. He's a good player, but he's not ever going to be a guy that you're going to consistently count on for offense.
Right.
The big problem, as I've been saying all year, is their offense is their outfield. You need production out of your outfield, your corner spots. And, Polanco now is on the DL with, what they probably believe to be, maybe COVID issue. Shelton wouldn't talk about it last night. They call up some guy named Hunter Owens from the minor leagues, which
well, Evans struggling. That's big. He's now hitting 226. He was hitting 326 a month ago this time.
As you talked about, that's going to happen. Colin Moran's a nice bottom of the order hitter. If he's your 3, 4, or 5 hitter, your team's in trouble.
Yeah.
Adam Frazier's. They just don't have enough bats that are hot right now, and
Hayes has to return at some point.
Yeah, unfortunately for the Pirates pitchers, they're going to have to put up a lot of zeros here. One thing you're going to watch, though, is with the minor leagues getting started last night, a guy that they expect to be up here this year at some time had a nice start. Former first-round pick Travis Swaggerty with Indianapolis last night.
That's a great name.
First at bat. That's an awesome name.
Yeah.
He homered in his first at bat. Had a few hits. He's a guy that many believe by the end of the year, and we're not talking like August or September here. We're talking middle of summer, that once this guy gets him at bats at Indianapolis, he could be a quick call up to the major league. So that's what I'm going to be doing every day. As I told you before, I'm going to try to find positives in every game, and we continue to see it with the bullpen. And I'm just going to be looking at the minor leagues and see which guys are producing down there. I want to throw out one stat here by Joe Block. He's very good, Pirate announcer at throwing out really good tweets. Richard Rodriguez, we've talked about him, and Kyle Crick. Both those guys haven't allowed a run yet in 23 now innings pitched this year. I don't even know how you know something like this, but he tweets this out. Richard Rodriguez is the first Pirate to throw a reliever perfect game, 27 batters retired in a row since at least 1974.
And that's obviously a great era of Pirates baseball, but that's an amazing stat. Obviously,
Rodriguez is that he's been the story without a question. He's been the brightest spot of the season for the Pirates. Why he is turned,
Right.
There isn't a better closer in baseball right now than Richard Rodriguez.
No, and that also speaks to what's the inevitable. He's likely a trade piece, and he can bring tons of value for sure. But he has been phenomenal, and obviously that's not the same as a starter per game because it's spread out over a month. But still, he's pitching a lot. That's still amazing, and it's not just Rodriguez. To be fair, too, the Pirates had a great bullpen effort last night, which is what led them to the victory. In addition to Mitch Keller, the offense wasn't there, even though Reynolds did have a couple hits. Moran did have a couple hits, but you obviously need more. You mentioned Stallings 0 for 3, Frazier 1 for 4. Just not enough overall. But the bullpen, Howard came in, nothing. Brubaker came. Bernard came in. Brubaker didn't come in. Bernard came in, 1 run off 2 hits. Obviously, his ERA is 2.31, and he's been among the worst in terms of ERA for the bullpen. The bullpen has been great, and then Crick and Rodriguez, of course, throwing the goose eggs up there. A couple strikeouts, only 1 walk for Crick. Again, great bullpen work. Howard's been every day of the week. Bernard been every day of the week. Rodriguez is often, even when they don't have a save, he sometimes comes in. It's been a great bullpen this year. Some thought it would be a strength. It's been more than a strength this year. Obviously, there's trade pieces here, but this has been a bullpen that you can't speak enough about. That's an incredible stat. And you're looking at maybe even multiple. If they don't trade these players, or maybe even if they do, we're talking about Brubaker deserving an all-star nod. Rodriguez and Howard might maybe deserve all-star nods if you're just being fair to them individually and for what they're doing at their spot. The Pirates aren't getting 3 guys, but they have some pieces. And I think before the season, many would have thought, is there any all-star here? They have some choices. It's going to be a conversation. Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti here on Mic'd Up here in the morning on Pittsburgh Sports Live, presented by Martin Lawn Services. Number there at the sign behind Mike V. Now, Mike, as we close up shop here on this edition of the morning show, it's hump day. People are normally in a good mood. You're almost at the weekend. You're kind of towards the end of the week, not yet there, but people are happy even though it's raining outside every day this week. But the fire is in the belly still, and this doesn't even necessarily affect the Penguins because the Penguins got a win over the Flyers last night, revenging the night before. But as they close the regular season, they've been better than advertised, etc. This talk isn't really about the Penguins. It's just about in general and one of the Penguins' main rivals, and that's the Washington Capitals' Tom Wilson, who against the Rangers went a little crazy even for him, pulling hair, doing an MMA-style move. The NHL's punishment is just $5,000, which does cap them in the CBA, but there's not a suspension. And I can't remember another time in pro sports or even college sports or really anything organized athletically where an opposing team officially throws out a tweet that basically virtually slapped everyone in the face, to everyone's surprise, even those covering the NHL the closest possible, where not only do they come out and say there should have been a suspension here, they don't know how there's not a suspension here. They're calling for people's jobs. They literally are saying they don't know how somebody can continue at their job and they're not fit for their position in terms of with the NHL. It's just crazy right now. Should Tom Wilson be suspended? How is the NHL handling this? And should they be handling this differently? And then will the Rangers feel any wrath? And just thoughts on that move by the Rangers, because that had to be a decision at the top of the franchise. You can't have an intern send that out. And I imagine that life could be rough for them in the NHL right now. They just called out the league. I'd imagine they're not going to get too many calls, but they felt they had to do it. That was surprising.
The hats off to the New York Rangers for them to do that. And
strong language. God, yeah.
Tom Wilson should have got suspended. The 2 biggest things that surprised me were, number one, that tweet by the Rangers calling them out. And that game tonight should be very interesting. I would. That would be.
Yeah.
I don't watch very many NHL games during the week that don't involve the Penguins.
Yeah, tune in.
Tonight might be one of those games, just as far as to see what happens, because there's no question about it. It's going to get ugly. I would imagine it's going to get real ugly. And Tom Wilson will be the center of it. The other thing that surprised me a little bit, but not, I don't even know it surprised me, but it does, but it doesn't, is the amount of people that have publicly supported Tom Wilson. as far as former players.
Yeah.
It
Ryan
just,
Whitney in
yeah,
particular.
it's, I don't even understand it. It's stupid. The only thing I can think of is stupidity, as far as to see what you saw there.
Mhm.
And the only thing that didn't prevent this from, I can only imagine if his back of his head would have hit the ice there on the play where he's pulling,
Yeah,
pulling.
and it would have been exactly reminiscent. I don't know if you remember this, but it would have been exactly reminiscent of Todd Bertuzzi and Steve Moore. Steve
Yeah,
Moore is a name that people probably forget. He is still a paraplegic.
yeah. See, that's what I would do. I know this. Some people would disagree with me on this, but I think the only way for this to get uh, bigger and to possibly stop this is to have somebody in the New York organization, or the player himself, take some sort of legal action against Tom Wilson, and to draw.
It's
Uh,
happened before,
yeah, I would go that route, and to go against,
right?
and I would maybe even against the head of discipline. The head of discipline. I don't know what you could charge him with.
Yeah, clearly they're not a fan of him. Yes.
Yeah, I would go that route, because what you're going to do there then is draw national publicity to the league. Right now, this is, the
Right.
NHL fan, family, or the fans on Twitter.
Yeah.
You start taking criminal actions against an organization or a player, then you're going to start having national news outlets covering it. And Gary Bettman doesn't want that. He doesn't.
No.
No, he doesn't want that, and that's what I would do.
Especially with the ESPN deal coming.
Yes, exactly.
You want ESPN to talk hockey? Buckle your seatbelt. They're going to talk hockey on how there's illegal crimes happening on the ice and trying to injure people intentionally. That's not good for your first appearance on First Take, for example.
If I'm these media outlets too, this is what I would be hounding Gary Bettman,
Right.
Except in the big picture. Fox, CNN, places like that, they don't give a crap about this incident. But it would be nice if everyone is demanding Gary Bettman to speak as to what their decision making is to why they get Colin, whoever, in front of a camera and talk about why it's a $5,000 fine, play him the video and say, can you explain this to me, for the average person out there with the criticism you're getting? How is that justified?
Right.
Yeah,
because I think that's an issue, an indictment of the league. I get the legality of the NHL sometimes has their hands tied and you can't do so much because of certain rules. I get the NHL more than any other league doesn't want to really fight the CBA because, as we know, there have been multiple lockouts in the last 15 years. They cannot afford to deal with that after a pandemic. I get it. The problem is this is why you need to make sure you have something that's reasonable when you do these CBAs and that it is fair to you. And it doesn't need to be like Roger Goodell where he's just judge, jury, and executioner and it's not really fair, but it needs to be more than this. The NHL, it seems like the NHL looks ridiculous. They can't do anything. People are just running amok. The inmates running the asylum and 5,000 as a max for, and I want to make this clear. This isn't just anybody. This is a repeat offender.
Right.
And
exactly.
in every league, in every walk of life, even if you're working at a fast food restaurant, if you are a repeat offender, the boss is going to say, well, this isn't your first time. Even at school with your son. If your son never gets in trouble and then maybe throws a paper football in the room, I'm sure they're going to say, well, Mike, he never gets in trouble. We'll move past it. But if he's doing it every day for 6 months, they're going to say, we need to cut this out. He's a repeat offender to this. So that's Tom Wilson in the NHL right now. You described it, hair pulling, knocking the guy down, almost it was like a wrestling move, if anyone's familiar with The Miz. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I don't see, I can understand. I'm not saying every hit is like this. I'm not even somebody that wants fighting removed from hockey altogether, because I think you can have some physicality and some scraps every now and then without having to make it MMA on ice. But this is MMA on ice that's not necessary. So I don't know why that has to be a max. I get the legality, but that needs change yesterday. There could even be, because somebody brought this up too, that even if you can't do more than $5,000, because these players are all rich and he's had a big contract, you could at least suspend $5,000 and then at least suspend. That could be something.
But this is more than just a slew foot or some sort of
it's ridiculous
incident. the second that happened, Gary Bettman had to be on the phone with the head of disciplinary
He should
discipline and say, hey, I don't care what the fine is. This guy is a predator. We're suspending him.
out, and we're at the end of the
If
season, playoffs. He should be out.
Yeah, if we have a battle against the Players Association, whenever,
Yeah, because they would appeal it, right?
Do it. The Cleveland Browns or the NFL had no problem suspending Myles Garrett last year for the rest of the season and into the playoffs for what he did to Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, that's very comparable.
Roger Goodell. That's why the NHL or the NFL is the gold standard for all professional leagues, sports leagues. They handle something like that.
Yeah.
In the NHL, and that's why they are what they are.
And to the NFL's credit, years ago with the Ray Rice issue, they didn't really handle that well. They then changed course, which was arguably double jeopardy, but they managed to fix themselves and say, we messed that up. Now we're going to be better. This is an NHL opportunity to fix themselves and now be better. And I think what we will need to watch for tonight, which is going to be big to this, and what Gary Bettman needs to watch this game. If you remember back in the 90s, before they really cared about this and people just kind of went crazy with revenge in hockey, something called Fight Night at the Joe between the Red Wings and Avalanche. And at that point, that rivalry was in ratings wise, was getting as many ratings as Michael Jordan games in the NBA. That was when the NHL was at its peak. There was an incident in the playoffs the year before, Claude Lemieux doing something very similar player like Tom Wilson, because Ryan Whitney said it. Every team would want Tom Wilson. Probably, he's actually a good player. He's not just a goon. He's not just like Matt Cook, who was with the Penguins. He can do more. He actually can play like Claude Lemieux could, as he was integral on several cup teams. But he just did a ridiculous thing, taking out Chris Draper. It was literally looked to be totally unnecessary. And Darren McCarty and the Red Wings started a literal bloodbath that took the entire game. And they literally said, we're going to just fight this guy. It turned into a complete chaotic atmosphere. And that could occur tonight. It sounds absurd. We haven't seen it since then to that magnitude, even though we've seen brawls. But I wouldn't be shocked. If I'm the Rangers, I'm calling someone up. I mean, they're not winning the cup this year. What is their motivation to play nice if there's not even going to be a punishment to one of the young players that gets hurt? And the intent's there regardless of the injury. So
yeah, tonight
he got to answer to this. And if that happens, Gary Bettman really is going to have a problem.
Yeah, to borrow a phrase from my old friend, my good friend John Steigerwald, he used to say this with players that he despised and that were bad people. Right. Tom Wilson's in line for what I hope for is a career-ending injury night.
I mean, he would deserve it. Honestly, it's his own fault.
Take his knee out. Whatever you have to do. The guy has had more than two hands worth of incidents in the NHL. They still haven't done anything. It's better to get him out of the league before somebody is permanently injured or worse from one of his actions. It's obviously he's not learning from anything he's doing. There's no discipline from the league. They're letting him do what he wants year after year after year after year. So it's better to get him out of the league, and whatever happens to him tonight happens to him.
Yeah, honestly, again, normally wouldn't say it, but I wouldn't feel bad at all. If anyone's going to deserve that, it would be him. And then he can take his money and go home. And legally, they probably wouldn't win because of the legality of the CBA. They probably would not win. But if I'm the Rangers and I'm going to throw that tweet out there, I would consider some legal measure. I would at least discuss with a lawyer, because Todd Bertuzzi had to go to court for his incident. No, he didn't end up in jail, but he had to go to court and had to pay some medical bills. If you remember Marty McSorley in the early 90s, that was a major scandal that took years in court. Wayne Gretzky had to testify. That was something that went to court. And again, Marty McSorley didn't go to prison for 30 years, but had to pay some money. And it looked bad for the league. It looked bad for the player. They never were the same again. It did actually pretty much ruin both of their individual careers. And both McSorley and Todd Bertuzzi were great individual players too, even arguably better than Tom Wilson. So do that. If that's your only recourse, even if you're going to lose the case, take him to a court battle for a year, make him pay attorneys, embarrass the league, and make him out of the league if that's what you got.
Yes, embarrass the league is the biggest.
Because that would embarrass the league.
Nothing big is going to happen to Tom Wilson.
Right.
It's just about his reputation, which is crap to begin with. But make the league look bad, and hopefully be a case, maybe a precedent-setting case that finally starts to change things around.
Yeah, to say the very least, we will see. That's appointment television for that game here this evening and the rest of the way, really. And we will see every minute on Twitter. I'd recommend following at New York Rangers because that is a lit account right now. I imagine they're going to have more words. And maybe Gary Bettman will say something because that tweet in any other league, when you're the commissioner, you got to respond. That is, and that's not just any franchise. That is an original 6 franchise that is saying your dean of discipline, you and everyone else is incompetent. They didn't call it Gary Bettman by name, but they basically might as well have. That's bad. So you got to respond in some way.
That also shows you just how
the disrespect of them. Too.
Yeah, it also just shows you how ass backwards the NHL is. Just the fact that in any other league, if something like this would have happened, somebody from the league, and namely the commissioner, would have been front and center and would have spoken on something
by now.
Yeah. The NHL is the only league that would just, okay, it's just everyday business, hide behind whatever. It's ridiculous. That's why the NHL is the NHL.
It is. Well, have a great rest of your day, guys. For Mike Vukovcan, I'm Mike Asti here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and Pittsburgh Sports Now. That'll do it for this one. And again, the NHL is being talked about. They're in the national conversation and not for something good. So maybe the NHL can try to fix that.